This is Research Like a Pro, episode 200, Genealogy Source Citations Simplified with Lisa Stokes. Welcome to Research Like a Pro, a genealogy podcast about taking your research to the next level, hosted by Nicole Dyer and Diana Elder, Accredited Genealogist Professional. Diana and Nicole are the mother-daughter team at FamilyLocket.com and the authors of Research Like a Pro, a genealogist guide. With Robin Worthland, they also co-authored the companion volume, Research Like a Pro with DNA. Join Diana and Nicole as they discuss how to stay organized, make progress in their research, and solve difficult cases. Let's go! Hello, everybody. Welcome to Research Like a Pro.
Hi, Nicole. How are you today?
I'm good. Hi, Mom. How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
And what have you been doing lately?
I've been working on my NGS presentations. So NGS stands for National Genealogical Society, and their conference is coming up soon, and I'm giving 3 classes. So I've been working on PowerPoint presentations, getting those just how I want them. So one of them will be fun. I am talking about my Royston project and using Y-DNA to prove this line that I had pretty much proven with a paper trail. But right in the middle of this line, it goes all the way from California in the 1900s back to Virginia, early 1600s. Right in the middle of this line is a bunch of indirect evidence. And I felt fairly certain, actually really certain about it, but it's always really nice when you have Y-DNA to say, yep, that is the right line. And so anyway, trying to figure out exactly what I want to share from my case study and, just get that into a really logical format is what I've been working on.
Yeah, I've enjoyed reviewing your slides and seeing what you've been working on. And I finished my slides for NGS about Airtable as well. So I'm looking forward to being there at the conference. And just a couple additional announcements are that we have our fall study group beginning in September, which is going to be Research Like a Pro, which focuses just on documentary evidence. And registration will begin around June. And we'll get some exact dates for that posted soon. And if you'd like to be a peer group leader for that study group, please apply on our website. We'd love to have you. And to get notice of coupons, join our newsletter. And sometimes we have deals on our online courses.
Wow, I can't believe the fall study group is coming up. I can't even think about that yet. I'm still enjoying spring, but it is good to plan ahead and think of what educational opportunities you want and get your schedule set up so that you can focus in on whatever you're doing. We're excited to work with many of you in that study group. Well, today we have a fun guest. We have our friend and colleague, Lisa Stokes, here to talk about citations. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, how are you?
Very good. So let me give a little background on Lisa. Lisa is also an accredited genealogist, and I actually met her at the Brigham Young University track on accreditation during a conference in 2015. And we were both getting started on our journey. She was accrediting in Mid-South, and I was doing Gulf South. And so for the next 2 to 3 years, we did a lot of talking about what we were doing and asking questions back and forth. It's just great to have a buddy who's also accrediting. And we would have gotten in touch more in person, except for Lisa was actually living in Dubai and I was in Utah. So we had to rely on technology. So Lisa also serves with me on the commission for ICAPGen, and ICAPGen is the International Commission for the Accreditation of Professional Genealogists. So that is our accreditation body. And I work on the presentation committee, and she leads the education committee. So Lisa went through the very beginning of the ICAPGen study group. She and I both did some of the very beginning ones, and she is an educator, and she had some ideas about how to really improve that. And so she took that on and now runs the ICAPGen study groups, which is a wonderful program for mentoring anyone who wants to learn about accreditation. She also works with me on the presentation committee because those two things kind of go in hand. She's done a lot of videos that are on the YouTube channel for ICAPGen. Lisa has a Bachelor of Science in Education from Brigham Young University, and as you can tell, she loves to teach, lecture, and coach others in overcoming research challenges. we're excited to talk to her today about her new citation course, which has been, as everybody knows, a bugaboo in everybody's research life, trying to figure out how to do citations. So we're excited to talk to Lisa about that. She also has presented at Roots Tech and the BYU Conference on Family History and Genealogy, the SLIG Day at the Family History Library. That's a special night during Salt Lake Institute. We have accredited genealogists teach classes at the Family History Library. And currently, Lisa has a really fun job. She is using DNA skills as an independent contractor solving criminal cases for law enforcement using investigative genetic genealogy. So that's neat. In the past, she worked as a research fellow at BYU in conjunction with the Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency. That's an ongoing program there at BYU, and they are helping the U.S. Army locate family members of missing soldiers from past conflicts. So, wow, you can tell Lisa has a really strong background in so many things. She loves to learn and has taken courses at all the major institutes, the Salt Lake Institute, the Genealogical Research Institute of Pittsburgh. She's done the ProGen program and the Research Like a Pro with DNA study group. That was a long introduction, Lisa. Do you have any feedback on that introduction?
Well, thank you. That was great. I'm just glad to be here today.
Well, we're glad to have you.
So, I do love citations, and I am excited to talk about citations, believe it or not. I think they're fun.
Well, I remember when we were both teaching at Roots Tech about accreditation, and you saying that it took you like a long time to do your first citation.
Me too. It took me a long time as well. Sometimes it feels like you're just sitting there staring at evidence explained, like, okay, what do I do with this? Lisa, tell us more about your progression in learning to write citations.
Well, I've come a long way since I first started. When I was first learning how to write citations, and I found out that I had to write professional and consistent citations in order to accredit, I was pretty overwhelmed. I was confused, and I thought, I have no idea what I'm doing here. As Diana mentioned, we were living overseas, and I had the Kindle version of Evidence Explained given to me by my dear hubby. And that is written by Elizabeth Schoen Mills, and she's done a fantastic job. And so I thought to myself, perfect, here we go. All of my citation problems are solved. But I realized right away that I still had so much to learn. And so, like, the first citation took me an hour and a half, and I struggled through the entire thing. I thought my brain was going to explode. And then the second citation wasn't much quicker. And I thought, really? Is this really expected of me? Anyway, yeah, we can feel really overwhelmed as beginners.
Well, I know that when I was starting work on accreditation, I felt the same way. And I gradually, got a handle on it, but I couldn't tell you how I did. It was really just the struggle, wasn't it? Just studying evidence explained and looking at your source and then trying to put something down that made sense. I remember well those feelings.
Agreed. And I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to do difficult citations with like records that were a little different than the typical template for a census or something or a vital record. Like when I came across records on Fold 3, those ones were always challenging for me, like trying to figure out, what National Archives record group am I looking at? Really trying to understand the source sometimes is hard
Mhm.
when you don't know that much about it. So then if you don't
Exactly.
understand it, it's harder to write a citation about it. So that was one thing that I think was the steep learning curve at the beginning. So Lisa, you must feel better about citations if you're going to be teaching a citation course.
Yeah, actually, sometimes I think that I could be called a citation nerd because I actually do love writing citations now. It never stresses me out anymore. And I find it fun and easy. And I've cemented the habit of creating the citation the first time I encounter it. And sometimes we have the tendency to say, "Oh, I'll do it later." Sometimes that works, and you can recapture the information you need, but more often that requires that you revisit the source, and this just wastes a ton of time. So I feel like I've come a long way, and I don't feel confused, and I don't feel overwhelmed anymore when it's time to write a citation. I just jump in and do it.
It's a really good point, that we should not go back to the source later to recreate it unless we're fine with wasting a lot of time, because it does take time. You have to remember everything you already learned the first time you looked at the source.
Exactly.
Yeah, I agree. I'm so annoyed at myself if I ever don't create the citation and then I'm right in the middle of writing the report and just want to copy and paste it and it's not there. So that doesn't usually happen for me with records, but sometimes it happens with reference material. If I've looked at a website and been setting up on the history and I haven't created a full citation, I just have a link. That can be fine, but then I have to go back and look at it and create the citation. So I 100% agree. All right, Lisa, let's talk about what made the difference for you. How did you go from being overwhelmed and frustrated to confident and feeling like citations are fun?
So, three major things really made a big difference for me. First of all, was using templates. So, I have a master template that I use to create all my record type templates so that my citations stay consistent. The second thing that made a big difference for me is learning about punctuation. And I learned about that by delving into chapter 5 of Mastering Genealogical Documentation by Tom Jones. Then the third thing that made a big difference for me was I changed my master template into two distinct sections. So, Paul Graham, he's an AG who wrote an article called Cite Anything in the APG, which is the Association of Professional Genealogists, and it was in the September 2020 issue. And he encouraged two sections in your citation. The first section is to cover the source and the information that's contained in the source. And the second section is to cover how you access that source. So, the beauty of this structure is that when a shortened subsequent citation is needed, that means that you've already used it in your report and you're going to use it again and you'd like to shorten it. It's super easy to shorten it because you simply just omit the access section. Have either one of you read that article by Paul?
Yeah, I do remember when that came out. I thought it was really interesting. So, Paul is also a CG. He's one of the few AGs and CGs, so
That's
accredited
right.
genealogist and certified genealogist. And he also works for Ancestry Pro Genealogists. So, he's a professional genealogist writing citations all day long and came up with this structure to simplify and make it easier. I thought it was really interesting, and I'm interested to talk more about it.
Major light bulb moment for me.
Well, let's talk more about these three major concepts. So tell us more about citation templates.
So, when I first started, I consulted books and other researchers' templates, and I started building my own template bank. So, I had taken the NGS citation course. So, I had some citations from there. I had found templates online that people had posted. And I also looked at Evidence Explained, and a good portion of my templates came from delving into Evidence Explained by Elizabeth Schoen Mills and following her guidelines on that. She has some amazing stuff in that book. And then also Mastering Genealogical Documentation by Tom Jones was another one that I delved into a lot. So I had a pretty good mosaic of different citation styles going on. And when I realized that I really wasn't being as consistent as I possibly could be, I decided it was time to make all my citations consistent. And this was especially important for accreditation. One of the requirements that ICAPGen has is that your citations are consistent. They don't specify that you have to follow a certain style or that you have to do it a certain way. They allow freedom to be able to use any citation style that works with the region that you're researching in. I decided to make that one master citation template, and then I used that to create all my record type citation templates. And my citations were much more consistent at this point, and I felt much better about them, and I passed my accreditation. So,
Consistency is really important with certification too, as you were talking about that. And I was thinking about my portfolio and how, when I work on my work samples for that, I'm really cognizant of trying to be consistent in my citations. And one thing that helps me with that is just putting them next to each other in my Airtable log and comparing them and making sure that I'm doing them the same way and kind of taking note of like, okay, I'm going to use this style, kind of like a style guide, and just keeping
Mm-hmm.
notes, like you said, of I'm going to do it this way to remind myself. Because just the way that it is, I don't work on it every day, all day for like 3 months. I'm working on it one day and then take a break for a few days. And so it's helpful to remind myself of what I'm going to do, my plan for consistency.
Yeah, I like your idea of comparing them in your Airtable. I've done that too on Excel, where I just made the cell really long and was able to compare all the citations and get them all consistent.
Yeah, I think consistency is one of the things that really bothers me when I'm doing review of other reports because I do look at the citations. And if I see a census cited one way and then a different way, it bothers me. I think it makes your work more readable and understandable if someone is reading a report and they get used to how you're doing the citations. So there's really a real purpose for consistency. And I love the idea of a template. I don't research unless I have my template open. Mine's in Google Sheets right now. Someday I've thought maybe I should move it to Airtable, but maybe I'll do that in the future. Right now it's still in Google Sheets. But I love it. It makes it so much easier to create a citation, just having something you've already done to copy. And somebody mentioned, either you or Nicole, that sometimes you come to a really difficult one. Like I think it was the fold three. And I agree, fold three is difficult. And sometimes you don't have a template for something, but you can find something similar and say, oh, okay, I think this is a format that would work for this new source. And then, of course, you always want to add your new source to your template, right? And keep building it.
Exactly.
Okay, so your second concept was learning about punctuation. Tell us your take on punctuation.
Believe it or not, all of those italics, parentheses, quotation marks, and semicolons actually mean something. You don't just use them haphazardly. And as an ICAP Gen study group leader and mentor, I saw a lot of varied uses of punctuation. And in order to be able to give somebody proper feedback, I had to understand that punctuation myself and make sure that I wasn't just following somebody's template, but that I understood it. So I delved into chapter 5 of Tom Jones' Mastering Genealogical Documentation. My chapter 5 is full of notes and markings, and I really spend a lot of time making sure I understood and that I was able to take all those different punctuation conventions and be able to make valid comments on those. I also purchased the Chicago Manual of Style so that I could look up items there. There are some basic punctuation rules, they're not complicated. And so I thought maybe we could go over those for a minute. The first one is that we work with the reference note format as genealogists while we're doing citations. So a reference note is going to be like a sentence. It starts with a capital and ends with a period, and all of the elements in between are separated by commas and semicolons. So that's just a first thing to keep in mind. Some styles do use periods throughout, but in general, most people follow that rule. And italics denote a published source. So we usually consider a website, a book, journals, things like that to be published sources. So those are usually italicized. And then quotation marks denote the parts of a published work. So let's say you have a chapter in a book or a database at a website or an article in a journal, those would all be put into quotation marks. Examples of parts of a website could also be files on a website, page on a website, or a collection or a record group of some sort on a website. You would probably use quotation marks for that. Quotation marks are also used for the title of an unpublished material. So published or italicized, unpublished would be in quotation marks. And let's just say that that work didn't have a title, then you would just use your own words to describe that work, and you would not use quotation marks in that case. And then sometimes you do need to use an exact quote in your citation, and so that's when you would use quotation marks also. Then parentheses surround a word or grouping of words that refer to the previous statement or word. So, for example, we often put the URL and the access date inside parentheses. Then, right before that, you'll see the website that you're referring to. And so that means that everything in the parentheses is referring to that website. And the standard is to not put a comma between those two items. And then we have commas and colons and semicolons. So a comma separates items in a series, and a colon announces the words or the list that follows. So you'll see that with the access date in a URL, things like that. A semicolon groups words or related sections and separates them from the rest of the citation. So often we'll have a layered citation, and so we separate these sections of a citation with a semicolon.
One of the things that I see a lot is that comma in between, like ancestry, naming the website, and then the parentheses and the URL, putting that comma there. So I'm glad you clarified. No commas needed, because that part in parentheses is just clarifying the location information for the website. Or if it's a book, it's the publication information for the book. So isn't it funny how these little things can make a difference? And I love how you talked about how they shouldn't be used haphazardly and they actually mean something. I think
Yes.
that's a great point.
Yeah, the most common thing that I see is people putting quotations around all sorts of different things in their citations. So, yeah.
Yeah, confusing when to use italics and when to
Hmm.
use quotations. Yeah, it's great when you finally get it down, because it gets easier and easier, and then it really helps you understand the citation when you're reading it, when it's punctuated correctly.
For sure. And it helps to understand the punctuation in order to write it correctly. It's one thing to notice like that something maybe is done differently or maybe incorrectly, but it's another thing to like give feedback and say why it should be different, Like this looks funny to me, you should change it. Isn't as good of a comment as according to Chicago Manual of Style 17.2.1, this is how it's done with humanities style source citations. So it's been a wonderful help to have Chicago Manual of Style. And often there will be little things in citations that are included there that aren't in evidence explained, or it just helps to kind of see the broader picture sometimes. So
I agree.
well, great. So that was punctuation. Really good. Now, your last concept was about splitting your citation into two parts. So tell us more about that and Paul Graham's article and how it helped you.
So he suggests the two sections. The one covers the information contained in the source, and the second section covers how to access the source. So the beauty of this structure is that when the shortened subsequent citation is needed, then you just omit that last section. And I really like this concept. It was just such a light bulb moment for me. It simplified my citation style, and it took away all the confusion for me, because so often I would look up in different resources where I was supposed to put that information that was contained in the source. Like, let's say it's a marriage record and I have the marriage date and the two parties that were married. In some citations that you see, it's before the website information, and in some, it's after. And so that was so confusing to me. For some reason, I just got really frustrated with that. So now, with my new style that I've been doing for the past couple of years, everything is just right there in front of all the access information. And I was also confused by the image numbers. I always wanted to put the image numbers up where I stated more about the source, when in actuality, that's how I accessed it. So now I put the image numbers at the end in that last section, because that's more of an access information. That's just been really helpful for me. One thing that's great is that if you need an extra layer, you just add that semicolon behind the access information, and then you can give more detailed citing information as it's needed. And that also can be cut off when it's time to shorten that citation. And so that was another great concept for me to understand and to stop being confused about.
I love that concept. It does simplify it, and adding another layer if you looked at the digitized image, but you also want to reference the fact that it's a microfilm at the Family History Library. Yeah, you're right. It's not hard to add another semicolon and to include that information.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I think sometimes we just need a structure, and it sounded like this was the perfect structure for you to organize every citation according to this. So that's great. And we'll link to that article in our show notes and also to the blog posts that you have on Family Locket about this for anyone listening and who likes to read and study a little bit more after listening to the podcast. So that brings us to your course. So you mentioned that you're working on a citation course, and what made you decide to do that?
Well, last year in 2021, I had several of my accreditation clients ask me to create a citation course. So I did. I finally just dug in and said, okay, I'm going to do this. And it turned out that I had so much fun developing the course and teaching the course. And probably one of the most rewarding things for me was watching the participants learn and feel confident and be able to write their citations without being confused and overwhelmed. It was a great experience for me. So I took their enthusiasm and their excitement, and I let that inspire me and give me the confidence to go ahead and launch a course this year. So I have decided to get going on that.
That's so great. I know we did the same thing with Research Like a Pro. We tested it on this small group because we had no idea if it would work for other people. I mean, I knew having a process worked for me, and it was so fun to see people actually get it. So I completely understand where you're coming from. And we have actually had people wish that there was more on citations because we do the one module on citations, but this is going to be an entire course, which I think it sounds fabulous.
Yeah, I'm super excited.
So, what is the course going to be called?
Genealogy Source Citations Simplified. I hear from people all the time through the study group, my accreditation clients, for other people that I've worked with, how confused and frustrated and overwhelmed that they feel as they're trying to learn citations. And so I want to share that knowledge. And I feel like that title helps them understand that this does not have to be super confusing. You can simplify it and you can learn to all the basic rules that you need to know in order to write an effective citation.
That's a great name and great goals. And I think there's so many people that would want to take the course.
I hope so.
So, what are the concepts you're going to teach besides using the templates?
We are going to start with the why of citations, of course, and why it's so important to write clear, consistent, and professional source citations for all of your genealogy research projects. Even those people who aren't professional, if they don't feel overwhelmed by writing their citations, they're going to write them and include those in all of their research projects. And that really adds credibility to a project when it's properly cited. We'll also learn about structuring citations for consistency, speed, and ease. We will go over punctuation rules in a little more detail than we did here today. We'll also spend time learning how to evaluate a source. This is such an important skill as part of writing your citation. The citation needs to convey what the researcher saw when they referenced the source. So I teach about effectively using what I call the researcher's description section of the citation. Oftentimes you'll see this as digital images or database website or something like that. And so I teach how you can use that section to convey the format of the source that you saw and maybe even the reliability, like did you look at an index or did you look at an actual image? Those sort of things we'll cover. Also, the URL and the do's and don'ts when it comes to URLs. Then, several people have asked me about covering foreign citations. So, I will show people how to develop a citation style that's workable and consistent with foreign regions. And I do have some examples of foreign citations that they can look at. And one thing to keep in mind is that once you have your style down, you can take other people's citations and you can adapt that to your style. And so that's a really important concept that you aren't stuck into a style that may not work for your region, especially if it's a foreign region.
I think that's so valuable because we see that in reviewing others' work. Say they are doing a whole research project in German records, and they go to evidence explained, and there's nothing that really correlates with exactly what they're seeing, and they feel lost. So that's great that you're going to help them develop a style for all the different kinds of records and whatever foreign language or record type that they're using. You mentioned a little bit about your record type template, and you have a term here called the template bank. Can you just explain a little bit about that and what that has to do with your course?
Yeah, so my template bank, I call it the record type template bank, is what I use to keep all of my templates in. And so I have it divided into different categories, and I use that to pull a template from, and then I adjust that template however it's needed for the specific source that I'm reviewing, that I'm looking up, and that I'm citing. And so I have that ready to go. So I just pull that up whenever I'm working, and I can grab the citation template and plop it into my project or my research log, and I'm ready to go to create that citation.
Oh, great. And you have it in Excel, right?
I have mine in Excel. I actually found when I was running the course last year that it was easier to share it with everyone on Google Sheets. And so I have it on Google Sheets now. I generally work off that one so I don't have to change both of them.
Yeah, yeah. I know you don't want to have to go back and forth.
Right. Yeah. So I pretty much converted to Google Sheets now.
It's really handy for sharing when you use Google Sheet.
Well, and I did have a few of the students want it in Excel, so that was really easy for me to convert it to Excel for them and send it to them that way too.
For sure. So, with your record type template bank, have you been able to put any foreign citations in there yet?
Yes, so I'm working on Scandinavian sources. I have some friends that are helping me with this, obviously, because I don't do a ton of research in all these areas. But so far, I have Scandinavian, French, Polish, English, Canadian, and Mexican. I actually do a lot of Mexican research myself in my daily work. And so I have those citations ready to go.
How wonderful. And I'm sure that if people who want to take your course don't research in those areas, but in another country, that you can work together and develop the right citations for their area.
Yep, yep.
That's so neat. Well, tell us a little bit of the structure. When is your course meeting? What are the dates? How does everything work?
So the first session is going to be run in June. So every Tuesday in June. So that's the 7th, 14th, 21st, and 28th. I decided that 6 p.m. Mountain Time is a good time, not too early for the West Coast, and hopefully not too late for the East Coast. So that's what time we'll be running it. I tend to binge listen to podcasts. So there might be people listening to the podcast that it's well past June of 2022. And so if it is, just go to my website and see when the next course will be running, and you can get more information there. Students will have access to the recordings. So let's say you can't make it to one of the lessons or you want to review it, you will be able to go watch the recording. And I also have a digital syllabus, and we will have homework assignments. They're not too hefty, but you will be creating anywhere from 2 to 5 citations each week that will get reviewed with your peers and from me. Peer review and mentor review really helps cement the learning. When you peer review somebody else's work, you kind of have to think, what's the rule here? And it makes you think. And so doing peer reviews is actually a great way to learn. So we will be doing a little bit of peer review, and also I'll give feedback on your homework. And of course, one of the major bonuses is that everyone who signs up for my course will receive my entire record type citation template bank. And they can either use that as their own and start using the templates there to create their own citations each time they need it, or they can use that as a reference when they want to adapt a template to meet their own style. That will be available to everybody. I've had multiple people ask me for a copy of my template, and I've always felt hesitant to do that because it wasn't perfect and it wasn't consistent. It wasn't complete enough. And so my template bank is a work in progress. I'm always finding new templates to add to that. So the students will have access to that as well. So it was a very big motivation to run the course, to go through my template with a fine tooth comb and prepare to doing a course.
That sounds like you really focused in on citations and have prepared some wonderful materials for everyone. And I think a template is so fun to look at because then you can adapt it to your own research, or you could use it just like it is. So I love seeing how other people approach the same type of citation. So
Exactly.
that's going to be really, really helpful for anyone in the course.
Lisa, have you ever had a citation that really stumped you?
When I first started, yeah, I had them stump me all the time. But over the past 4 or 5 years, I feel like I've really been able to dig down deep when I find a citation that maybe is a little hard or a little confusing. And I'm always able to come up with the best approach. One thing I love is that the principles I teach can help tackle any source that you run into. So sometimes you might think, "Oh, wait, what's going on with this source?" And by delving into it and really analyzing the source and really looking at each component and everything that you're looking at, you can come up with something that will work. And one thing to keep in mind, Elizabeth Shown Mills has stated many times, I've heard her say this, that writing citations is an art, not a science. So there's never an absolute one right way to do things when you're writing citations. You need to just each source is going to be a little bit different, and you may need to adapt your template as you're working on that specific source. So remember, there's always flexibility. And the important thing is that you're conveying the information you found in the source, how you found the source, so that somebody else can go find it again.
It's so liberating to think about the idea that there's more than one right way to do it, as long
Mhm.
as you understand the principles underlying it. So that's great that what you teach applies to every source. It's the basic principles of citations.
Right. And basically, the only right way to do things is consistently.
Mhm. It's kind of ironic.
Yeah, it is.
Well, and I remember going to Tom Jones's course at Roots Tech on citations, and I agree because he said they need to be consistent. And the other term he used was clear. And I think
Yes.
the way that you have this structured will make it so that any citation is very clear, because that's one of the things I do see in citations is this muddling of the different layers and the different pieces so
Hmm.
that they're not separated out. And so this way you're teaching really separates those out, makes it so much more clear and understandable. So that is the right way to do it. Clear and consistent, right?
Yep.
So how can our listeners find out more about your course?
So you can visit my website, which is Lisa Stokes, heritageresearch.com, and you can read my blog posts and sign up for my course there.
Great. How much is the course?
So it's going to be $99 for the 4-week course. I am running an early bird special of $79 if you sign up by May 15th. And there will be early bird specials for all the other sessions that I run in the future as well.
Great. And is there a deadline for registration?
The deadline will always be just the day before the course starts. It's really not hard for me to add somebody to the course. So it'll always be the day before the course starts.
Well, and it doesn't sound like there needs to be any preparation. Just come to the course, you'll learn, get your assignments, work on it, do some feedback, and just really cement your citation learning. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. And just a little bit of homework each week. It won't be super overwhelming, but you'll have to put an hour or two. Or if you want to do more, you can always put more work into it. But yeah, it will take a little bit of effort in between these classes.
Well, it sounds like a perfect opportunity to maybe pull out a project or a report that you did in the past and go through and fine tune your citations so that when you're finished, you actually have a work product you're proud of rather than some citations you weren't super proud of before. So I can think of a lot of great ways to use the course.
Yeah, I love that idea. Great idea.
Well, thank you so much, Lisa, for being here and talking about it. It's always fun to catch up with you, and it's been fun to learn and grow together. And it's fun because as fellow educators, We love helping other people, and it's fun to talk with you.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I've had a great time chatting with you too.
Thanks for all the citation tips, Lisa. We'll talk to you again soon. Bye.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you for listening. We hope that something you heard today will help you make progress in your research. If you want to learn more, purchase our books, Research Like a Pro and Research Like a Pro with DNA on Amazon.com and other booksellers. You can also register for our online courses or study groups of the same names. Learn more at familylocket.com/services. To share your progress and ask questions, join our private Facebook group by sending us your book receipt or joining our courses. To get updates in your email inbox each Monday, subscribe to our newsletter at familylocket.com/newsletter. Please subscribe, rate, and review our podcast. We read each review and are so thankful for them. We hope you'll start now to research like a pro.